Booting Sessions will not mean getting rid of him. Sessions is a key witness in Mueller's investigation into the president. Here to help us through this breaking news, some of our favorite reporters and friends. With us from the Washington Post, White House Bureau Chief Phil Rucker. From the New York Times, reporter Mike Schmidt. Associated Press White House reporter Jonathan Lemire. Frank Figliuzzi's here, former FBI Assistant Director for Counterintelligence. Chuck Rosenberg, former U.S. Attorney and former senior FBI official. And with us on set, John Heilemann, NBC News and MSNBC National Affairs analyst and co-host and executive producer of This Circus on Showtime. Chuck Rosenberg, I'm coming straight to you. On all things Robert Mueller, this was always going to be a precarious time. Donald Trump, whether feeling backed into a corner by Democratic gains or emboldened by Republican gains, and as only Trump could be both in one moment, he seems to be. But the concern was always going to be the fate and the future of the Mueller probe. My understanding, it is now likely in the hands of a staunch Trump ally, a person who is more a political figure than a respected legal mind, and someone who has written openly about his concerns and displeasure with both the duration and the direction of Mueller's probe.
That's right, Nicole. I think you've characterized it fairly. You don't get to be the acting attorney general and overseeing the Mueller probe following the dismissal of Jones unless they know, Trump knows, the White House knows, what you think and how you're going to act. I hate to say that. I would hope that Matt Whitaker could rise to the occasion. I would hope he understands the gravity of this investigation and that his reputation and the reputation of the Department of Justice are at stake. That's what I hope. What I fear is that they picked him because they know that he thinks the Mueller investigation has gone too far. He wrote that a little bit more than a year ago in an article for CNN. If you read that article, it's chilling. I can assure you the president either read that article or had someone read it to him, because it tells us exactly how Matt Whitaker thinks about the Mueller probe.
Mike Schmidt, he wrote, I'm going to read from that op-ed, he wrote, the president is absolutely correct. Mueller has come up to a red line in the Russia 2016 election meddling investigation that he is dangerously close to crossing. I believe that's the red line that the president discussed in an interview with you and your colleagues about looking into his business interests. What's your sense of Matt Whitaker's vision for the Mueller probe?
Well, that red line has been sort of completely destroyed by the Justice Department when earlier this year they went into the offices of the president's lawyer, executed a search warrant, and took documents with them as part of an investigation into something unrelated to the Russia probe. Now you have that person who thinks that if Mueller did that, that was over the line, overseeing the Justice Department. I can't believe that he thinks that since he wrote the op-ed that the investigation has become more tame. So it'll be interesting to see what he does now. Does he really try and rein Mueller in? Is it something simply as not approving measures that Mueller wants to do? Does he cut his funding? Or does he just not do anything? And that's where we're sitting right now, just a day after the election.
Frank Figliuzzi, how do people like Rod Rosenstein and anyone on his team who has taken on role of overseeing the Mueller probe, really, my understanding is only being involved at a very high level, sort of navigating perhaps timing of some things. How does someone like Rod Rosenstein now report to someone who Robert Costa covered and moderated a debate with called a rah-rah Republican? How does someone like Rod Rosenstein report to and turn the Mueller probe over to someone like Whitaker?
So Rod's going to have to make a decision about how fully Whitaker gets briefed. And the way Washington works is you brief your chain of command. So Whitaker's going to need a full briefing on everything Rosenstein knows right now about the special counsel investigation. And that's going to get interesting because even though Whitaker's been out publicly saying that Mueller's crossed a red line, he's done so without understanding what Mueller's got. And so I suppose there's still a possibility that if Rosenstein gives him a full briefing, that there might be sufficient connections to all of the finances that Mueller is looking at and the idea of Russian collusion that Whitaker will have to say, I see the linkage. They're inextricably linked. They're linked to Russia, and I see why we need to move on with this. But I have to tell you, let's go back to what Chuck said. I think we're watching obstruction of justice play out right in plain sight. I fear there's a quid pro quo. You do this, I name you acting attorney general, or I nominate you for attorney general. you take care of the special counsel investigation, and that's public corruption.
Mike Schmidt, Donald Trump so much as said that to you in an interview, I believe, during his Christmas vacation. He said he wanted his Roy Cohn. He said he admired Eric Holder because he saw him as Frank Figliuzzi just described him wanting someone to be. He wanted his guys at the Justice Department. Is it your sense that he's realized that ambition he articulated in an interview with you?
The president has struggled to understand what the attorney general is and what the attorney general is supposed to typically do in Washington. And the president sees the attorney general as someone who should be his personal lawyer. He has essentially said that. He has said that Bobby Kennedy was that for JFK. He says that Holder was that for Obama. And he wants that himself. He wanted his Roy Cohn, his own personal lawyer leading the Justice Department. That's what he thought Sessions should do. He could never understand why Sessions recused himself. He couldn't get his head around it. He thought that Sessions should be loyal to him. That was more important than the law or the facts or the evidence or the role that Sessions played during the campaign. And he has said it publicly. He does not hide his feelings about it. He has been open about it. In July of 2017, as you were playing before, he openly says, look, I wouldn't have made him my attorney general. Everyone around the president says that if he was paying attention during the transition, he clearly would have known that Sessions had to recuse himself because of the role he played during the campaign.
Chuck Rosenberg, the conduct of the president vis-a-vis Jeff Sessions is very much under scrutiny by Robert Mueller, both the private conduct that Robert Mueller may or may not have learned about from hours and hours of interviews with people in the cabinet and on the senior level of the White House staff. He's also scrutinized, we know from Mike and his colleagues reporting, his tweets and his public statements. Some of them, most of them, we played. What does this picture look like to you as a former prosecutor? Does it look like, as Frank Figliuzzi described, obstruction of justice?
Yeah, I think Frank is spot on, and here's why, Nicole. We know that Mueller, I think we safely assume that Mueller is looking at an obstruction of justice case. All of those tweets, all of the comments by the president describing what he wants done and how he wants it done look like steps in a path toward obstruction. It strikes me that if you're firing Sessions because you're unhappy that he is not protecting you, as a Roy Cohn would, and you put in somebody who will protect you, that's just another brick in the wall. That's another question to ask. It's another round of interviews for Mueller to conduct. Why was Sessions removed? And it's pretty clear to me it's a removal, even though the letter says resignation. And what are these other people going to do now to help protect the president? I think this adds to the obstruction case. It doesn't subtract from it.
That's so interesting, Chuck. So you're basically saying that Whitaker might be of interest as a potential witness to Mueller to answer the question you just posed. What did you promise the president? And was there a quid pro quo?
How did this deal get done?
Yeah.
Look, it might be completely innocent. It might be that the president thought Matt Whitaker was the best person on the entire planet to be the acting attorney general of the United States.
You don't seem like you believe that's a viable scenario.
He is a lawyer. Maybe that qualifies him.
Maybe.
He wrote a letter defending, excoriating Rosenstein and criticizing the investigation by Mueller. Maybe that qualifies him. Or maybe there's a deal. And I hate to sound so sinister and to imply something so nefarious, but this is a question that I think Mueller has to ask.
All right.